While the Dragon Pit fell in King's Landing, much more was happening at Tumbleton, and it is where our attention must turn now. As word of the unrest at King's Landing reached Prince Daeron's host, many younger lords grew anxious to advance upon the city at once whilst it was vulnerable. Chief amongst these was Sir John Roxton, Sir Roger Crone, and Lord Unwin Peake. But Sir Hobart Hightower counselled caution, and the two betrayers refused to join any attack unless their own demands were met first. Off-White, it is to be recalled, wished to be granted the great castle of Highgarden with all its lands and incomes, whilst Hardhugh Hammer desired nothing less than the crown for himself. These conflicts came to a boil when Tumbleton learned blatantly of Aemond Targaryen's death at Harrenhal. King Aegon II had not been seen nor heard from since the fall of King's Landing to his half-sister Rhaenyra, and there were many who feared that the Queen had put him secretly to death, concealing the corpse as to not be condemned as a kinslayer. With his brother Aemon slain as well, the Greens found themselves kingless and leaderless. Prince Daeron stood next in line of succession. Lord Peake declared that the boy should be proclaimed as Prince of Dragonstone at once, while others believing King Aegon II dead, wished to crown him king. The two betrayers felt the need of a king as well, but Daeron Targaryen was not the king they wanted. "We need a strong man to lead us, not a boy," declared Hardhugh Hammer. "The throne should be mine." When bold John Roxton demanded to know by what right he presumed to name himself king, Lord Hammer answered, "The same right as the Conqueror, a dragon." And truly, with Vhagar dead, at last, the oldest and largest living dragon in all of Westeros was Vermithor, once the mount of the old King Jaehaerys himself, now that of Hardhugh the Bastard. Vermithor was 3 times the size of Prince Daeron's she-dragon Tessarion. No man who glimpsed them together could fail to see that Vermithor was a far more fearsome beast. Though Hammer's ambitions were unseemly in one born so low, the bastard undeniably possessed some Targaryen blood, and had proved himself fierce in the battle, and open-handed to those who followed him, displaying the sort of largeness that draws men to leaders as a corpse would to flies. There were the worst sorts of men, to be sure, sellswords, robber knights, and others like them, men tainted of blood and uncertain birth who loved battle for its own sake, and lived for women and plunder. Many had heard the prophecy that the hammer would smash the dragon, and took it to mean that Hardhugh's triumph was foreordained. The lords and knights of Old Town and the Reach were offended by the arrogance of the betrayer's claims, and none more so than Prince Daeron Targaryen himself, who grew so wroth that he threw a cup of wine into Hardhugh's face. Whilst Lord White shrugged this off as a waste of good wine, Lord Hammer said, "Little boys should be more mannerly when men are speaking. I think your father did not beat you often enough. Take care I do not make up for his lack." The two betrayers took their leave together and began to make plans for the Hammer's coronation. When seen the next day, Hardhugh was wearing a crown of black iron, to the fury of Prince Daeron and his true-born lords and knights. One such, Sir Roger Crone, made so bold as to knock the crown off Hammer's head. "A crown does not make a man a king," he said. "You should wear a horseshoe on your head, blacksmith." It was a foolish thing to do. Lord Hugh was not amused. At his command, his men forced Sir Roger to the ground, whereupon the blacksmith's bastards nailed not 1 but 3 horseshoes to the knight's skull. That was more than Prince Daeron's loyalists were prepared to suffer. Lord Unwin Peake and a somewhat reluctant Hobart Hightower summoned 11 other lords and their landed knights to a secret council in the cellar of a Tumbleton inn to discuss what might be done to curb the arrogance of the base-born dragon riders. The plotters agreed that it would be a simple matter to dispose of White, who was drunk more often than not, and had never shown any great prowess at arms. Hammer posed a greater danger, for of late he was surrounded day and night by lickspittles, camp followers, and sellswords, eager for his favour. It would serve them little to kill White and leave Hammer alive, Lord Peake pointed out. Hardhugh must need die first. Long and loud were the arguments in the inn beneath the sign reading "The Bloody Caltrops," as the lords discussed how this might be accomplished. "Any man can be killed," declared Hobart Hightower. "But what of the dragons?" Given the turmoil at King's Landing, Sir Tyler Norcross said Tessarion alone should be enough to allow them to retake the Iron Throne. Lord Peake replied that the victory would be done more certain with Vermithor and Silverwing. Mark Ambrose suggested that they take the city first, then dispose of White and Hammer after victory had been secured. But Richard Rodden insisted that the course would be dishonourable. "We cannot ask these men to shed blood with us, then kill them." Bold John Roxton settled the dispute. "We kill the bastards now," he said. "Afterwards, let the bravest of us claim their dragons and fly them into battle." No man in the cellar doubted that Roxton was speaking of himself. Though Prince Daeron was not present at the council, they were loath to proceed without his consent and blessing. Owen Fossaway, Lord of Cider Hall, was dispatched under cover of darkness to wake the prince and bring him to the cellar, that the plotters might inform him of their plans. Nor did the once gentle prince hesitate when Lord Unwin Peake presented him with the warrants for the execution of Hardhugh Hammer and Ulf the White. Eagerly he affixed his seal. Men may plot and plan and scheme, but they best pray as well. For no plan made by man has ever withstood the whims of gods above. 2 days later, on the very day the conspirators planned to strike, Tumbleton woke in the black of night to screams and shouts. Outside the town walls, the camps were burning. Columns of armoured knights were pouring in from the north and west, wreaking slaughter. The clouds were raining. Arrows and dragons were swooping down upon them, terrible and fierce. Thus began the Second Battle of Tumbleton.